Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another short story versus episode video for the Goosebumps series, and this is the last one I have to do for Goosebumps, as of now. And for today's video, we're going to be looking at a short story that was turned into an episode adaptation called Teacher's Pet. Now, the short story I gave, I think, like a 2.5 out of 5 stars, which on a short story basis, which I do in 0.5 increments, means a meh. This is just a very meh story for me. I really feel nothing in particular about it. It was, I think, in my bottom 15 of the entire Tales to Give You Goosebumps franchise in terms of the short stories, so take that for what you will, but it kind of edged out itself from being in that bad territory for me, so at least there's that. And the episode, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars, which is on a bit more of a normal metric, which means that this is pretty terrible in my opinion. So, yeah, off the bat, Teacher's Pet, I'm not a fan of, y'all. And you should know this before we go any further, especially if you're expecting, like, some obvious win here. Honestly, given the parameters of short stories to episodes, short story basis compared to something that I give a normal thing, honestly, points don't matter. Sometimes it can score higher and tie. Sometimes I can still mildly and almost overall prefer the other thing. But that's why I do these videos. I like to kind of go over specific things that I think one counterpart did better versus the other. And the criteria that we normally go over in these videos is, of course, the characters of the story, which version of the characters or what characters are only found in one particular version or whatnot are good or perhaps good additions or just better in general. Then we look at the atmosphere and decide which one has better atmosphere. Then we look at sometimes aesthetics. And for this one, there's not much different going on with the aesthetics, but there is an experimentation angle that kind of leads more into thought-provoking territory. So I guess I'll bring up that idea and mechanic and the aesthetics for this video. Because why not? This is the last one we're doing. So let's do it. And then we like to run over plot, which one had a better plot, the climax, which one had a better climax, and then the ending, which one had a better ending. So let's still go ahead and start off with characters, because Teacher's Pet surprisingly doesn't have a lot. Let's start with the main character, I think Becca, in both versions here. I think Becca in the short story is kind of below average, to be honest. She's some 6th grade generic kid. She has this whole angle with her and her friend Benji of being excited to finally get to attend middle school, or I guess their second year of middle school. I forget the exact details, but she's nervous about this teacher she wasn't anticipating on getting, who is named Mr. Blankenship. And she goes through this whole thing in her monologue, I guess to even say she has one, about Mr. Blankenship having these snakes all around the room and getting in trouble with Mr. Blankenship and all that, and how they want to kind of get even and maybe look up some dirt on him, but they end up finding out something that they shouldn't have found out, essentially. There's not a lot of character to her or personality that really imbues. As in the episode, I think Michelle Reese's performance did kind of bring some personality out into her. I think the episode gave her at least a more shining spotlight, in my opinion, in my memory. So for that, I think if I had a preference for Becca as a character, I'm probably going to give it to the episode. Just because, Michelle Reese did a very good job. And if you don't know the tragedy behind that actress, she actually passed away, unfortunately, shortly after filming this episode due to meningitis. And yeah, I prefer this version of the character, and whenever I do think about Teacher's Pet and Becca as a character, if I even remember her name sometimes, I'm always thinking about the episode. So take that for what you will. Now Benji, on the other hand, he may as well not even be in the episode. He's fine acted, I guess, given the material he's given, but he's just kind of there. As in the short story, he has more involvement. He's more of an equal player to Becca, I should say. and kind of influences the plot a bit more. So for that reason, I'm going to give Benji the edge to the short story. Now, Mr. Blankenship, this should come to no surprise here. Mr. Blankenship is kind of a goofy villain in the short story. You know, he's this guy, he's a brand new teacher, and he's obsessed with snakes, and the kids are like wondering what's going on with that and why there's a giant, you know, snake terrarium nearby his desk. And if you can't tell the direction of the story, you can just kind of put two and two together here. But yeah, that's, you know, in the whole aspect about, you know, his motives by the end with the kids just seemed just really corny, right? As in the episode, he's more of a threat, and there's more things going on for him. And I think the actor who portrays him, I think his name is Richard McMillan, does a fantastic job. I've never seen Richard McMillan in any kids' horror television episode that he's ever been in, or even movie for that matter, not turn up a great performance. And he really makes his character pop and gives him that creepy factor. So for Mr. Blankenship, I'm going to give it to the episode. Now, for some side characters, I think the short story might mention a few, and the episode might, you know, have a few on display, but they really don't matter. And that's pretty much all the characters that you really need to know, or the main three. If we want to talk about side characters, it's really unnecessary. If they are in more than the other, they might as well not even exist. So that's about it for characters. So I think, given the main three here, the episode slightly wins in that category for me, or or I guess mainly wins in some significant ways. Now for atmosphere, I think I'm also going to give it to the episode. The short story is just set in a school. There's nothing really intriguing about it. It's just a classroom, the entire story. And it's built up and built up and built up in this room, and there's nothing interesting about it. As in the episode, you have at least the intrigue of the forest, and the idea of something frightening could be lurking out there. So that's something commendable. It's something commendable to say about the episode. So, yeah, in terms of atmosphere, I definitely prefer it here, just because I think it just has a creepier ambiance going for it. Now for aesthetics, with like the experimentation angle, the short story just doesn't have that angle to it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of left field, as the twist implies, with the certain character in question, and it's fine, I guess. As in the episode, it does try to build on, once this character comes into the equation near the back half of it, to kind of explain what's going on, and that's where you get the idea of animal experimentation and trying to build this perfect species and what have you. And honestly, I really do prefer that angle in the episode. So for aesthetics, I'm also going to give it to the episode here. So shockingly, the one thing I think is terrible, I think is just better than the short story here. Now, given those criteria aside, let's move on to plot. This might shock a lot of you, but I think the episode's plot is one of the most least engaging things I've ever experienced in kids' horror. There's just nothing about it that screams impact. As in the short story, while it's not as cool with the characters, while it's not as cool as the aesthetics, and while it's not as cool as the atmosphere as the episode, the plot at least builds up a bit neater. And I do think there is a fun angle that it has going for it with trying to spy on the teacher, because they kind of want to get even with this guy, because the kids get embarrassed and they have some issues with him, and they kind of want to, you know, prove that this guy's crazy and obsessed with snakes and all that. There's something about it that just has more charm in the plot, and it doesn't bite off more than it can chew, per se. And it does feel like a brisk to read, even though it's rather short and not a lot happens in it. But then again, we're kind of praising mediocrity either way. So if I had to praise mediocrity, which one did it, I guess, better in that mediocre sense, I'm giving it to the short story. The climax. Now, the climax is depressing in either story you go in. In the short story, the climax is where the story ends. But I weirdly have some enjoyment in the climax in the short story over the episode. I think the episode is trying to be creepy. It has that creep factor, but it just feels whatever. You know what I mean? Especially how it's executed and how quickly it's wrapped up and just how dull it is. So there's that. It's not as memorable, ironically, as the short story climax for me, which is saying a lot. So if I had a preference on climax, I'm going to give it to the short story here. Now, coming to the ending itself, honestly, this might shock a lot of you, but I hate the ending of the episode. Given the bad CGI and all, given how kind of iconic and meme-worthy that has become, it is awful. Not necessarily the twist, just how it looks and how it's executed is just really painful, y'all. I have no words. Now, for the short story, like I said, the story ends once the climax is over and there's like a cutaway time skip of what these kids are doing, kind of, or, you know, an update of what their situation is post-climax, right? And if I'm being honest with myself, conceptually, I prefer the episode. But, you know, reasonably speaking, in terms of just how I feel given it all, I think I prefer the short story. And now, which one weighs better for me in that regard? Honestly, I'm probably going to give it to the short story counterpart, and here's why. Like I said, I know the ending is very abrupt and it's a nothing burger kind of thing, but it doesn't make me want to punch a hole through my screen or, you know, cringe laugh. So that is at least more commendable to me than the episode's ending. So that's why I'm going to give the victory to the short story for that criteria. So if you haven't noticed, we have a kind of like a tie down the criteria. And I've already mentioned this. The episode, I think, does characters better, has a better atmosphere, better concept with the aesthetics of animal experimentation and all of that. But in terms of plot, climax, and the ending, I think the short story is a bit neater and it doesn't bite off more than it could chew, and it's mostly fine in execution, even though it's just meh overall. I think those qualities do also kind of show some weight compared to the episode, which already should be an inherent plus, but doesn't quite put it over the short story, which was dull to begin with. So this brings me to this point, and this is a very case-specific thing that you'll see me do this for Teacher's Pet. I'm going to have to include some more emotions in these, which I normally don't do because I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But here's the thing. Just on enjoyability, they both are not that enjoyable for their own reasons. The episode is just very bland and dull, given, you know, the runway and the changes that the writer and the director went with for the episode adaptation. It should make a better story, but it just isn't better. And it becomes more frustrating and more hateable for that reason than the short story, which feels like it just didn't try. And it just felt like maybe it needed some tweaks to make it more interesting. Possibly, you know, it's nothing offensively bad. The characters were fine. The setup and the premise was fine for Goosebumps standards. You know, it doesn't make me full on hate it, but I can't really praise anything about it either. So we're kind of left at this crossroads of which one is superior. I can honestly see a lot of you going the short story. And I can see some of you actually going the episode because at least the episode has the better concept of the idea and it's more memorable because of the adaptation being kind of so bad it's good or whatever it is to you. I get it. But functionally, and just for my personal taste, if I had to pick, I would pick the short story. But if I'm being honest with myself, since I can't really praise either, and I kind of view them almost similarly, because a meh for a short story is nothing to write home about. And neither is a 2 out of 5 star episode either. I mean, that's getting to I hate this territory more so, but since it's not the worst episode ever and there's some solid positives, I'm willing to kind of enjoyment tie both of these and say that I really have no preference either way. I'm not a big fan with either one. Some days, let's say hypothetically, if I wanted to read the short story, it's a short and sweet one, I could, and it would be no, sweat off my back. Now for the episode, it does feel like more of a chore, but there are some things hidden in the episode that I do enjoy that I think are kind of cool and that make me look forward to watching some aspects of it. So take that for what you will. They're two totally different plots. I didn't really run down the plots in specifics. Like I said, the short story is basically stuck in a classroom doing, trying to pin the blame on Mr. Blankenship for being crazy, but finding out more information. The episode's about these kids in a sleepaway camp and all of that, and there's some exploration into the mystery of this cabin out in the middle of the woods, and they uncover some conspiracy to experiment on animals and stuff like that. So, it is what it is, but you're going to experience two totally different products if you are interested in checking these out. And since Goosebumps is a franchise, you need to read the short story first, preferably. In my recommendation, I would, and then go watch the episode. I think the episode might actually fare better for you if you read the short story first, because if you see what the short story was doing, you might appreciate the attempt that the episode does better, and it might make you like it more, because this episode is widely hated because of the fact that people probably watched this before they ever heard about the short story or even read it for that matter. So take that for what you will. But do that. And if you really want to watch the episode, you probably could, and you never have to read the short story, and you wouldn't miss that either. So this is one of those things that pick what you want, but if I had to keep recommending this to you all, try this first and then watch it. That's just what I think you should do. But yeah, that's my thoughts in the comparison in this short story versus episode video for Teacher's Pet. Let me know down in the comment section, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the short story? Do you prefer the episode? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.